Maaser Maaser Sheni. We have base solid. Maaser Sheni vetches must be eaten while immature and may be taken into Yerushalayim and taken out again. If they become unclean, Reb Tarfon says they should be divided among pieces of dough, but the Chachamim say they must be redeemed. And of Truma, Beit Shammai says they must be soaked and rubbed in a state of cleanliness, but may be fed in a state of uncleanness. Beit Hillel said they must be soaked in a state of cleanliness, but may be rubbed and fed in a state of uncleanliness. Beit Shammai says they must be eaten dry. Rebbe Akiva says whatever is done with them may be done in a state of uncleanliness. If Chulin money and Maaser Sheni money was scattered, whatever he picked up belongs to Maaser Sheni until it is completed, and the remainder is Chulin. If he gathered them and took them by the handful according to the proportion. This is the general rule. What is picked up belongs to Maaser Sheni, and what is mixed is according to proportion. If a seller of Maaser Sheni and one of Chulin become mixed up, he must bring coins with a seller and say, a seller of Maaser, wherever it may be, is redeemed by these coins. Select the better one of them and redeem them with it, since it is said, so silver may be redeemed with copper in case of necessity, not to leave it so, but to redeem them again with silver. Okay.
Okay.
By the way, I opened up on Friday. I was ready, and
Yeah.
the king kept spinning and spinning. I said, "Oh, he's at the marathon or something like."
Ah, yes. Okay, so you were aware of it. Okay. Mishnah Zayin. So again, we're still on the subject of how you can break up your coinage, and bearing in mind that every time you change from larger coins to smaller coins, the money changer is taking a commission.
Right,
And if you got to do it, you got to do it.
right.
But one of the considerations that we have is that we don't want to lose too much money from Maaser Sheni because this is Maaser Sheni money that's being changed. And so we want to try and minimize that loss. So Beis Shammai says, Lo yase adam es sala'av dinarei zahav. You should not take your this is talking about uh, you're right. This is talking about before you come to Yerushalayim. So he's got a whole bunch of silver. He thinks, okay, well, let me lighten the load and convert all this silver to gold. Beis Shammai doesn't like this idea. Um, be, um, but Beis Hillel are matir. They say it's perfectly okay. Again, because you're changing money for and this will result in a loss. But Beis Hillel say this is okay. Um, Beis Shammai are concerned. Oh, so the concern about Beis Shammai is that he might delay his coming to Yerushalayim until he's got enough silver to buy a gold piece, make it easier, um, and therefore he's going to be mevatel his aliyah l'regel. Beis Hillel say this is not a real concern, and therefore it's no problem to change your silver into gold. Amar Rabbi Akiva, Ani asisi leRabban Gamliel leRabbi Yeshua es kaspan dinarei zahav. I personally gave them change to make them to give them gold in place of their silver. So halacha follows Beis Hillel here. Ches haporet sela mimaos maaser sheni. Okay. So he is getting change from money of maaser sheni. Um, and this is somebody who is he's uh, right again. He wants to come to Yerushalayim. This is before he comes to Yerushalayim. So he's got a bunch of copper coins that are Maaser Sheni, and he wants to turn them into a seller, a silver seller. Beis Shammai Omrim Kol HaSelah Maas, turn the whole thing into silver. Okay. Beis Hillel Omrim shekel kesef a shekel mas. No, you should change it into just a silver shekel, which is half a which is half of a seller into silver, and keep a shekel's worth in copper. Why is that? Because when you come to Yerushalayim, you're going to want something to eat as soon as you get there. And
Right.
now I have to start, and now if everyone is doing the same thing, and they're all coming and saying, well, we've got too much silver, let's change it into copper, then the money change is going to say, well, we don't have enough copper for everything, we're going to push up the price. Okay, so that's their concern is people should have copper already when they come into Yerushalayim, so you don't cause long queues at the money changes and higher prices because their money wasn't like our money today where you've got a fixed base value on the copper coins and the copper coins add up to the silver coins and
Right.
so it's a very different concept for us because they're actually using the material value of the coins almost. Um,
Right. Yeah.
okay. Where's okay? Let's say I don't know, shekel kesef shekel mas. Rabbi Meir Omer ein mechalin kesef v'perus ala kesef v'chachamim matirin. So he says here's a situation. If you've already got silver, and now you discover, oh wait, I forgot to redeem this Maaser Sheni produce. I mean, he's actually still got the Maaser Sheni produce, and so let's say that's also worth a shekel. So he says, okay, so let's take that silver shekel together with the produce and redeem them onto one silver seller coin, which is the equivalent of the two of them together. And he said he doesn't. So Rabbi Meir is machmir about you're not supposed to take silver and change it for silver. You can change copper for silver, but silver for silver you can't do. And Chachamim say no, when it's mixed up with produce, then we're not so machmir on this. Okay. Um, Haporet Sela Shel Maaser Sheni B'Yerushalayim. Okay, now he's finally arrived in Yerushalayim. And now he's got his silver, his nice big silver coin, and he wants to get change. Okay, how much is he allowed to change in one shot? B'Shamai Omrim, Kol HaSelemaos, do the whole thing. Change the whole thing into copper so that you can spend straight away and not incur the transaction charge every time you want to change money. Beis Hillel omrim shekel kesef shekel mas. Once again, 50%. Take 50% of it, so that because if you change it into too much copper, then you're not gonna consume it all. Then you're gonna wind up again with copper coins in your hand, and you're gonna go back to Yerushalayim, and maybe either the copper coins are going to deteriorate, and you're not going to be able to buy enough with them, or you're going to be forced to change them back into silver, in which case you're again incurring the transaction charge. So they're saying just take it easy. And now we have all the shades of disagreement in the spectrum of how much you should be buying. So the details of this are not that important, but what you're seeing is that there's a spectrum of how much people say you should change. Hadanim lifnei chachamim. So hadanim lifnei chachamim is an interesting term. I don't think it's anywhere else in the Mishnah. But it's identified with Shimon ben Azai, Shimon ben Zoma, and Hanana Mitzri, and Hanani ben Chachinai. So it's a group of four of them, and they hold like Beis Hillel, like Hillel himself, that you shouldn't do the whole thing, but they disagree about exactly how much you should or shouldn't do. Say shlosha dinarim kesef dinar mas. You should only change one dinar. So a dinar is a quarter of a seller. So only take 25% of it and convert it into small change. So that, for the same reasoning as Hillel. Rabbi
Mhm.
Akiva omer b'shlosha dinarim kesef u'b'revi'is maos. Says 3 dinars. Um, um, how's he different? Hold on a second. He's also saying shlosha dinarim kesef of baravius maos, and a quarter of maos. In other words, that even the fourth dinar, he shouldn't completely convert. He should only do 1/16 of the seller. Okay. Rabbi Tarfon Omer arba asfare kesef. This is four aspare, and aspar is I think that's a Greek word. Let me just see that again. Aspare kesef, and the rest is and the rest should be copper. So whatever the calculation, the Kahati gives the calculation that only a 20th of the seller should be converted, and others read it differently as 1/12 of a seller. It doesn't matter what the exact amount is. All that we're saying is that there's a spectrum of views over here, and in any
Mhm.
case, you typically wouldn't rule like Rabbi Tarfon against everyone else. But I think the most interesting opinion over here is the opinion of Shammai. Shammai Omer Yanichena bechanus v'yochal kenegda says, I've got a simple answer for you. Don't change anything. Choose one shop, take your silver coin and deposit it by the shopkeeper. And anytime you need to buy anything, take it off the cheshbon. And at the end of your trip to Yerushalayim, come back and say, how much do you still owe me? Take back the money, go home. Shalom al Yisrael. Okay. Of course, the disadvantage of Shammai's method is that he can only buy from one merchant.
Right, right. Yeah.
That merchant realizes that, oh,
Ah,
I've got a captive market over here, so he can bump up the prices however much he
right,
wants.
right.
But perhaps Shammai was not kosher for somebody like that. At any rate, Kati says that we pass in the halacha like Beis Hillel, which is kind of the usual thing that you take it 50-50. And in Yetz Hashem, one day we'll be able to put that halacha to the test.
What did we say? An asper was equal to 5 dinners, it says, right?
Something like that, yeah.
No, come on. A dinner
It's in the
equals five
comments.
aspers. Right.
The
Dinner
asphalt,
equals five.
um, the asphar is where's the asphar? Here it is. A dinner is five. It's five asphars. Yes.
Right. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Back to Masros Dalad.
Okay. Dollar olive.
Dalad.
Wrong page. My thing was on the thing. Okay. Anyway, one may drink over the press with either warm or cold. They may be exempt. So where it says Rav Meir, but Rav Eliezer of Tzaddik declares liable. The comments say with warm he is liable and with cold he is exempt. If one husks barley, he may husk them one by one and eat. If he husks them and put them into his hand, he's liable. If one rubs parched ears of wheat, he may sift them from the hand to hand and eat. If he sifted them and put them into his lap, he's liable. If one sowed coriander for seed, his plant is exempt. If he sowed it for the sake of the plant, then both the seed and the plant must be tied. If Eliezer says in the case of dill, the seed, the plant, and thin stalks must be tied, but the comments say both seeds and plants are tied only in the case of pepperwort and eruca. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says the shoots of fenugreek, mustard, and white beans are liable to Maaser. And Reb Eliezer says from the caper, tithes are given from the stalks, berries, and flowers. And Reb Kiva says only the berries are tithe because they constitute the fruit. Okay,
Okay.
I'm going to Trumos.
Shemos. Yeah. Hey Gimel.
Um, if a sar of clean truma fell into 100 of unclean truma, it is neutralized and should be eaten in small cakes, or roasted or kneaded with fruit juice and divided among pieces of dough so that in no single place should there be an egg's bulk. If a sar of unclean truma fell into 100 of sars of clean truma, Beit Shammai forbids, but Beit Hillel permits. Beit Hillel said to Shammai, since the clean is forbidden to non-priests and the unclean is forbidden to priests, then just as the clean is canceled too, so too should the unclean be canceled. And Shammai said to them, no, if kulin which is treated leniently and is permitted to non-priests annuls the clean, should truma which is treated stringently and is forbidden to non-priests annul the unclean? After they admitted, Rabbi Eliezer says truma must be taken and burnt, and the comments say it is lost because of its small quantity. If a sar of truma fell into 100 and he lifted it out and it fell into another place, Rabbi Eliezer says it renders meduma, as does definite truma. But the comments say it renders meduma only proportionately.
Okay.
Okay.
Peah. Sein.
A vineyard that is all oleat, Reb Eliezer says to the owner, Reb Akiva says to the poor. Reb Eliezer says, when you harvest the grapes, you should not glean it, if there is no harvest from where they are oleat. Reb Akiva said to him, and you shall not glean your vineyard, even if it is an oleat. And if so, why is it said? When you harvest grapes, you shall not glean it, and the poor do not have the oleat before the harvest. If a person consecrates his vineyard before the oleat were recognizable, the oleat do not belong to the poor. If the oleat in it were recognizable, the oleat belonged to the poor. The Yossi says they give the profit of growth to the temple treasury, which is shikacha and the heiress, and whatever he cannot reach when extending his hand is in the rigalot after he passed it. And from when is everyone permitted to take leket? After the namasot have gone. In the case of parrot and oliat, after all the poor have gone in the vineyard and have come. In the case of olives, after the second rain has fallen. Rabbi Yudah says, but aren't there not some who harvest their olives only when the second rain has fallen? Rather, after the poor man goes out and does not bring back 4 issues worth. Okay.
Okay.
We have the Gayam. Okay. The Gayam. Olive, Dalit olive. There are four stringencies that apply to white hair, which do not apply to expansion, and there are four stringencies that apply to expansion, which do not apply to white hair. White hair renders tuma initially, right hair renders tuma initially, renders tummy with any shade of white, and has no symptom whereby it is tahor. There are stringencies that apply to expansion. Expansion renders tummy with any amount, renders all nagayim tummy, and renders tummy when it's spread outside the nega, which is not the case with white hairs. There are stringencies that apply to living skin, which do not apply to expansion, and there are stringencies that apply to expansion, which do not apply to living skin. Living skin renders tummy initially and renders tummy with any appearance. There are stringencies that apply to expansion, and expansion renders tummy with any amount, renders all the gaim tummy, and renders tummy outside the nega, which is not the case with living skin. There are stringencies that apply to white hair, which do not apply to living skin, and there are stringencies that apply to living skin, which do not apply to white hair. White hair renders a boiled nega and a burnt nega tummy. Renders tummy whether together or spread apart, whether surrounded or not. These are stringencies that apply to living skin, and living skin renders tummy on a bald area on either the back or the front of the head. Whether charged by the nega or not prevents one who turns completely white from becoming tahor and renders tummy with any appearance, which is not the case with white hair.
Okay.
And,
Vamos.
okay, a base should give. Reb Shimon says, be meticulous in writings in the Shema and in prayer. And when you pray, do not make your prayer fixed, rather in an entreaty for mercy and a supplication before the omnipresent, as it is said, for he, God, is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, abounding in kindness, and relentful in punishment. And do not view yourself as a wicked person. Reb Elazar says, be diligent in the study of Torah and know what to answer a heretic. Know what before whom you toil, and know that your employer can be relied upon to pay you the wage of your labor. Reb Tarfon said, the day is short, the task is abundant, the laborers are lazy, the reward is great, and the master of the house is insistent.
Okay.
And we have last Yama. Okay, Yud Dalet. A man and his wife went overseas, and they came and told her, your wife died, and he married her sister, and afterward his wife reappeared, she may return to him. He is permitted to marry the relatives of the second woman, and the second woman is permitted to marry his relatives. And if the first woman dies, he is permitted to marry the second. If they told him, your wife died, and he married her sister, and afterward they told him she was alive then, but now she is now dead, the child born is a mamzer, but not this child born after. Rabbi Yossi says, anyone who disqualifies for others disqualifies for himself, and anyone who does not disqualify for others does not disqualify for himself. If they told him, your wife died, and he married his paternal sister, and then they told him she died, and he married her maternal sister, and then they told him she died, and he married her paternal sister, then they told him she died, and he married her maternal sister, and then it was discovered that they were all alive, he is permitted to the first, third, and fifth, and they released their co-wives, but he prohibited in the second and fourth, a cohabitation with either of them does not release a co-wife. However, if he cohabitated with the second after the first one's death, he is permitted to the second and fourth, and they release their co-wives. But he is prohibited to the third and fifth, and cohabitation with either of them does not release her co-wife. A boy 9 years old and 1 day old disqualifies the Yavama for the brothers, and the brothers disqualify her for him. However, he disqualifies her only at the beginning, whereas the brothers disqualify her both at the beginning and at the end. How so? A boy 9 years and 1 day old who cohabitated with a Yavama disqualifies her for her brothers. If any of the brothers cohabitated with her before Mama with her, divorced her, or performed Kalitza with her, they disqualified her for him.
Okay. And
Okay.
we done.
Okay, great. Good to have you back. How was the
Yeah.
ski?